She may be out of leadership, but it does not sound like Congresswoman Cheney is going down quiet.
No, that's right. Liz Cheney has shown a pretty commanding control of the media narrative here. She had a photographer behind the scenes with her as she prepared her final speech. She has that exclusive sit-down interview on the Today Show today. She'll be speaking to the Fox News audience either tonight or tomorrow with another interview. She is doing everything she can to keep her argument front and center, even without her megaphone that came with the leadership position that she had. And she diagnoses the problem that she sees with her party this way in the interview with Savannah. Listen.
Our party has to be based on truth.
To be a leader in the Republican Party right now, do you have to buy the lie?
I think it's important for those of us who refuse to do that to be willing to stand up. Again, I obviously believe that the Republican Party policies are much better for the country. But I also know that we cannot convince people that they should put their trust in us if we are building our party on a foundation of lies.
What is the hold that President Trump has on the party?
Well, it's very dangerous.
How do you explain it?
I think it's a cult of personality, and I think people were betrayed and misled by him. It's a real betrayal now that he's willing to try to unravel the democracy to get back into power.
I can probably think of a dozen, mostly now former elected Republicans, who feel the same way as does Liz Cheney. The question and the challenge she will have is, can being Liz Cheney be enough to advance this argument beyond the shrinking element of now never Trump Republicans and ex-Republicans who oppose the former president?
Governor Whitman, you are part of this new group of 100 high-profile Republicans who are threatening to leave the party over this. But don't you need current sitting Republicans to leave to have any real impact?
Well, first of all, we've got to give them some backup. We've got to show that we will have their back, and we will be there to support those representatives like Representative Cheney, like Lisa Murkowski. We're going to be there for them, and that's going to help give them a little more freedom to act, because right now Trump's hold on the party is really based on primaries and the fear that these representatives, senators, and congresspeople have that his base will come out no matter what. And they're not so sure about the rest of the voters who are repudiating Trump right and left. I mean, his latest poll numbers, even though he tried to hide them, show that his positives are way down, way below his negatives of feelings of the public. So it's something that is happening. There are over 150 of us who have signed this particular renewal for America. And what we're doing is reaching out to those disaffected Republicans. You know, the Republican Party right now ranks third. Independents have the most registered voters, Democrats the second, and Republicans are the third. Trying to build a party without principles, without standards, without policy, trying to build a party that's a cult of personality around that one person is not a formula for long-term gain. They may win seats, which traditionally happens in this by-election, but I don't believe beyond 2022 they have a chance if they keep up this way.
Then what's your game plan? Are you going to go head to head with Trump and help recruit new candidates to challenge their seats primary style?
We will be supporting those candidates who agree with the principles that we have laid out for all Americans to see. We're going to have an open town meeting next month so that people can join in and see who we are and what we stand for. The principles are pretty straightforward. They're respect for the Constitution, the rule of law, the things that the Republican Party used to be about, that it got co-opted. It's gotten taken away by this man. I mean, to have the Georgia congressman stand up and say that the January 6th looked like a regular visit to the Capitol is mind-blowing. I mean, if anybody's been visiting to the Capitol, you know those groups are small, they're controlled. I mean, it's mind-blowing that anyone could think this way. But they do. And then you have you have so many of the American people, the 70+ million who voted for Donald Trump, who have listened to these leaders and they believe them. They're confused now. And we get that. So that's why we're laying out a series of principles to try to move the Republican Party back to where it was. But if we can't accomplish that through getting people to sign on to the principles and supporting those candidates who do and working against those who won't, who continue to spread the big lie, then there may be time for a third party.
We actually have some newly released from CNN body cam footage from one specific officer who was being attacked during that January 6th insurrection, and I want to share it with our audience. For anyone who may have heard from those Republicans yesterday who said, oh, it was just like any other day, please watch this. John Meacham, you are a historian witnessing these people trying to rewrite history. What's your reaction?
Yeah. That they're lying.
John?
They're lying in the sense of the will to power. They're attempting to take the Constitution that is about the mediation of differences and pervert it for their own purposes. And we don't have two parties right now that are equally rational actors in the constitutional structure. As currently constituted and run, the Republican Party is not a rational part of the political discourse. That could change. Governor Whitman's trying to help make it change, but it's going to take an enormous amount of work. And I think Liz Cheney did a huge part of that this week. I mean, to see someone put a personal ambition at stake for a principle is vanishingly rare in American politics. John Kennedy once said, there's a reason Profiles in Courage was only one volume. There aren't gazillions of examples of this. And so, and when you talk about the insurrection, that didn't even happen during the Civil War. I just want to say that pretty clearly. The Confederate Army never breached the U.S. Capitol from Fort Sumter to Appomattox. But a form of that did 3 months ago. And so we have to, it seems to me, as citizens, the central question of our time has to be, do we accept these rules of the road, whether we win or whether we lose? Or are we entirely about the acquisition and maintenance of our own power? And that's the fundamental question.
Eugene, it's not just electeds and it's not just lying about January 6th. It's also lying about election results. We saw 124 retired generals and admirals releasing a letter this week lying about the election results, again, saying that Joe Biden stole it, which we know isn't the case. How widespread is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's continuing to be surprising that it's more widespread than we thought, right? I think, that letter from the former generals was really surprising to people. I think people understanding how deeply rooted this was and is. It started with January 6th, for months. Then President Trump was lying about the election, lying about what happened. And Republicans were appeasing him and humoring him like they've done for years on some of the things that he had said and done and lied about. And so we talked about it as reporters and said, this isn't happening. This wasn't true. And on January 6th, we saw how bad those lies got. And we all thought that maybe that would make everyone move on, make everyone realize that that's not exactly what happened. But it's so deeply rooted in being a Republican. Liz Cheney obviously is the greatest example of that, right? Her being ousted because she didn't want to spread that lie. And I think what's interesting, because what we keep hearing from Republicans is that, this was about unity and making sure that everyone was on message. Her great sin is the same thing that Donald Trump does all the time, which is continuing to talk about the 2020 election. She's just telling the truth. And I think Republicans at this point, one of the reasons they're having a hard time having this conversation, why they were so upset with her, is because the Republican Party has not figured out how to deal with what happened on January 6th because of what they did and talked about and lied about the election. because that means you have to come to terms with the idea that maybe you had something to do with it, right? If you were someone who spread those lies and those lies were parroted by the people who breached the Capitol, what kind of responsibility do you bear? And I think that is where the party is trying to decide and trying to move on and whitewash their, their culpability and what happened on January 6th, because that would mean, saying I accidentally even had something to do with this.
But Garrett Haake, Republicans can't move on if they keep lying about this. If they want to move on, they could focus on Joe Biden's spending, and that might win over actually centrist voters. But if Republicans keep lying, people like you who work on the Hill every single day are going to keep asking them about January 6th. So why are they going with this strategy?
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? I mean, House Republicans hoped that by getting rid of Liz Cheney's megaphone that was attached to her leadership position, this issue would go away. But I respond to this when the former president lies about it, when a member of Congress says something abjectly ridiculous, like that it was a tourist day up here on the Hill on January 6th. So they will keep getting asked about it. But Eugene got to this. They do have a strategy. The strategy is to ignore it and hope it goes away. Hope that the former president stops talking about it. Hope that other news events take it over. They've got 50 Senate seats. They could stumble backwards into the House majority, and they're going to white knuckle it till 2022 and hope that eventually people stop asking questions about this.